Welcome to our Standards and Resources Committee meeting. Uh, First of the new year, isn't it? But it's probably a bit too late to say Happy New Year to you. Those of you that haven't met me before, I'm Barry Bond. I have unfortunately been ill for some time and still am, but I've made the meeting today and hope to make many more of our meetings and other council meetings as well. So welcome all to you. Welcome to Mrs. Bridgewater, Mrs. Harris, who will be presenting papers to us this afternoon. So do we have any, oh, sorry, the minutes of the previous meeting? Can we prove those minutes has been a true record? I have permission to sign them. Thank you. So do we have any apologies?
Yes, Chairman, we've got apologies from councillors Brindle, P Davis, Kinsey and Reid.
Thank you. So we can move on to item 4 on our agenda and ask Mrs. Harris to present this report to us. Sorry?
Just declaration.
Oh, it has been a long time since I did this. There's two things I've forgotten. One is declarations of interest. So first of all, are there any declarations of interest? No. And the other thing I've forgotten, which I used to forget anyway, is this meeting is being recorded. It is a public meeting. It's in the public domain, and it will be recorded. So by participating in the meeting, you are agreeing for your information and your comments, etc., to be included in the public domain. Okay. Right, we'll move on then now to item 4, Elections Act update, and ask Mrs. Harris to present her report to us.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, members. So this afternoon's report is another instalment on the Elections Act, and today it's going to be on overseas and postal vote handling. So firstly, overseas. So at the moment, we're still working through some of the legislation and working through some of the scenarios. So just to put this into context, on the 1st of December, we had 49 overseas electors. Last Tuesday, the legislation came into effect that there's no longer a time limit as to when someone was last registered or resident in the UK. Since last Tuesday, we have now had 25 applications come through our electoral portal, and my colleague Ben is working through those at the moment. So when we were kind of anticipating this legislation coming into force, we're expecting our numbers to double. So as you can see, in probably 10 days, we're nearly going to hit that. So for as a team, this is going to be quite a significant change for us. So what does this actually mean for us? So it means that a British citizen can register as an overseas elector regardless of when they left the UK, providing that they can satisfy either their previous registered or previously resident criteria. And this means that any overseas electors can now vote at a UK parliamentary election or UK-wide referendums. So thinking back to 2019 when we had our snap election, we had an awful lot of overseas electors to deal with at that point. As we head into a general election year, again, we're kind of building capacity in the team to think about how we're going to actually process and handle these applications. So there's two main types of an overseas voter. So the first is that they were previously registered in the UK. So that is someone who was on the electoral register before they left the UK to vote in a local or parliamentary register. And at the moment, the type of applications that we see in is that people have left 20 or 30 years ago, and they are now coming back on to the register. The second is that the elector was previously a resident, but they never registered to vote. So that could have been a young person who lived with parents and they've left the country. It could be that they never decided to register to vote, but now they can do so. In the report at 3.7, I've kind of just outlined some of these registration criteria. 3.10, just an outline of an overview of the process that we follow in the team to get some of these registrations through, and that's checking historical records, looking at DWP data, local data matching, or indeed taking some of the applications at face value. So if an elector successfully registers as an overseas elector, then their declaration is valid for up to 3 years. So at the moment, that's a change from 12 months. And each declaration will expire on the 1st November after the date the declaration has been made, unless the elector renews their declaration in the meantime. So our electoral management software system that we use will program all those dates for us, and then we send renewals and we send reminders to them as well, just to make sure that they keep their application up to date. So as I said, we're just working through all of our applications at the moment and going through the process. The second update I wanted to share was on postal vote handling. That comes into force on the 2nd of May, so that'll be in force for the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner elections. And in summary, what that means is that any postal vote that doesn't come to us via Royal Mail will now need to have a form completed with it. So as you can imagine, we're working through all the different scenarios at the moment. So what happens if one gets pushed through our external mailbox outside the council offices? What happens if someone brings that form into reception? And indeed, what happens on polling day when someone brings those forms back to us? So at 4.1, I've kind of set out what it means to be a political campaigner. It is now a legal offence for political campaigners to handle a postal vote. And again, it sets out at 4.1 what we actually mean by a political campaigner. So that's a big change for political campaigners. And just to clarify, political campaigners can handle as many paper applications as they want, because that's covered by the Campaigners Code of Conduct. So there'll be a limit to the number handed in at polling stations. So that's going to be 5 plus your own. Of course, when you put your postal vote in the envelope, they all look the same with a purple flash on the top. But again, that's just something to be mindful of. So just to recap, new documentation is going to have to be completed either at the station or here on reception. And again, we're working closely with customer services to get everyone trained up and work out what that means for us. But anecdotally, what we have is we have about 100 handed in every day at reception at election time or through the external mailbox. So again, we're just anticipating what numbers we're going to have to deal with and what paper forms we're going to have to get printed out. And with any kind of campaign, new campaign that comes into force, there's going to be a communications plan that sits alongside this. So to make sure that we make the electorate aware of what's happening when they receive their postal vote pack, we're going to put instructions in there, and of course briefing all our polling station staff as well on the new changes. And just thinking about the outside external mailbox, there's going to be a big sign to actually say where people can actually post their newest post boxes. So that was for me. That's it for me for an update today. I'll hand back to the chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Harris. I think as members can see, the procedure is going to get very complex compared with what we've been used to. And I'm sure there's going to be quite a number of issues arising from this process when it's first implemented. Are there any questions for Mrs. Harris? Mrs. Allen, Councillor Mrs. Allen.
Thank you. How on earth are they overseas voters going to get candidate details? Obviously, if people are overseas, how are they going to receive information about candidates so they know what to vote for? It seems a fallacy to me to have instituted this process without some thought behind harvesting emails and so forth, because it makes it more easy for you to communicate with them as well if there's a problem.
I think if I may step in here, I think it's not up to the council to put election communications about candidates to the individual voters, give them a list of who the candidates are, yes, but I think it's up to the candidates to do their own publicity as we do at the moment in terms of any election materials. I don't know whether Mrs. Harris wants to add anything or change that.
No, that's absolutely right, Chair.
Any other questions? Yes,
Other
Councillor.
questions about staffing for you, because this sounds horrendous, both for the polling stations and for you in this building. It would be sensible to have somebody permanently in the foyer, wouldn't it, while this is taking place? Because otherwise you're going to be swamped and you'll be here till midnight every night. How many staff do you think you're going to need to cope with this?
Yes, so we're working with customer services at the moment, and we're going to draw up a rota. So we'll have a permanent member of staff that's always on customer services dealing with general inquiries, and there's going to be another member of staff that's purely going to just be dealing with these, filling these forms in.
Thank you. Any more questions? No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Mrs Allen.
Yeah, just one more thing. If the person who brings in the postal vote is not a person who themselves is voting and has to sign a paper, how on earth would you cope with that?
The reality is we're not going to know what's in that envelope, but the person who signs the form has to make a legal declaration when they're filling that form in. So, yeah.
Any further questions? No? Well, thank you very much for your report. I think, again, from the comments that we've made here, we are in for a time of bit of confusion, I think, with a lot of people, and I'm concerned about the bureaucracy that's been introduced with this process. I'm not sure it's been completely thought through. I know we've done our best in terms of communicating with people and getting some consultation, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other issues that are going to arise very, very soon with this. Thank you, Mrs Harris. Item 5 on our agenda now is the polling district place review. And Tom Reynolds, your report, please.
Afternoon, members. So this is really a follow-up from the report that we brought to you just before Christmas, where we outlined polling district place for review. So as you're aware, we went live with our polling district place review in November 2023, and the details of the review were made available on the council's website, notice boards, through social media, all of the mainstream ways that we usually promote them. As we mentioned before, the purpose of this polling and district place review was really to prepare us for the up and coming PFCC, but primarily the general election, which will be happening at some point before January 28th in 2025. So the purpose really was just to prepare ourselves and make sure our polling stations were suitable for any elections that will be coming up. As you're aware, we had the parliamentary boundary changes, so we just wanted to make sure that all our stations were suitable for the general. As mentioned in the report before Christmas, we were only recommending one change, which was the polling station change in the Kings Winford and South Staffordshire constituency. So that's polling district RAA, Purton East. We recommend the move from Purton Pavilion and Scout Club on Gainsborough Drive, Purton, to the Lakeside Hall in the Purton Civic Centre on Church Road. As it says in the report, this was recommended due to feedback of poor accessibility at night and in wet weather, and due to the building being unusable at the last local elections in May, we had already actually made the change for that election, and it was a really big success. The Lakeside Hall was for those voters, so we saw it as more suitable to maintain. We had no feedback about that during the consultation, no one pushing back against that, so that change will take place and it will come into effect in the next election held in that area. During the consultation period, we only received one comment or representation made that can be found in Appendix 1, but just a bit of a summary on that. So although it wasn't necessarily about a change in a polling place, it was about a room change. And I'd just like to report that good progress has been made. I'd like to actually thank Councillor Dr. Paul Harrison for his help with that, where a more suitable room in the building that we use will be used for the general election, moving from a slightly smaller room to the hall. So good progress was made there. Although we did only receive the one comment during the consultation time period, we did receive a comment a couple of weeks later from Cheslin Hay Harris, which we have obviously taken into consideration, although it hasn't been published here. We have taken their advice on board. So that essentially is the end of the polling district place review. Following approval from the Standards and Resources Committee of it on today, so we'll publish a notice of conclusion, and the changes will obviously come into place at the next election. However, I think it's important that we make you aware that we will continue to monitor all polling places during the next year. These aren't fully set in stone. You know, if something really went wrong at the PFCC election, we would obviously take into consideration any possible changes before general election. So we just wanted to make you aware that we are continually monitoring them, and we always welcome any feedback from members or members of the public after an election. So if anything does happen at the PFCC or any by-elections before then, and you feel there needs to be a comment made, please do get in contact with the elections team. We're more than happy to take those considerations under review. Otherwise, the polling district place review will obviously, the conclusion will be published shortly after this meeting, and the changes will come into place as soon as the next election happens. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your report. I seem to recall, it seems a long time ago now since we had the last election, but I seem to recall we did have quite a volume of candidates at the last election with the parish councils and the district council as well, and things did appear to run very smoothly then. So it's good to see just a few comments that have been made, and there's been some change, one change since then. But are there any questions at all or any comments from Tom? Councillor Allen, Mr. Allen?
Yes, thank you for changing Purton's. That was my request. The pavilion is still unusable, and even if it was, in order to keep the flow through in such a small room, both external doors had to be open, which was absolutely perishing cold for the staff. I did note that there was a sudden change at the last moment, wasn't there, about the actual count as well. Being changed from St Dominic's School in Brood to Purton Civic Centre, and I wonder if you've got any reflection about that, please.
Mrs. Fax, you can answer. Yeah, Mrs. Fax.
Yes, the decision mainly to change from St Dominic's to Purton was around parking provision. Because we were doing the count during the day, that was a school day, so we would have had, those of you that know Brood, there's quite limited parking facilities. Obviously Purton allowed us, because there's a large car park immediately adjacent to it. It was mainly around the parking issue that caused the change to the venue. There were no issues with actual St Dominic's as a count venue apart from the parking.
I welcome you back.
Any other comments or questions? No? Well, thank you. We'll move on then to our next item on the agenda. Without stealing Mrs. Bridgewater's thunder, can I say how pleased I was to see this report? I think it's a very, very positive report, and it does the council credit. So could I ask Mrs. Bridgewater to give us a report on the progress on the council's workforce development strategy?
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, members. The item today, which is entitled Progress on the Council's Workforce Development Strategy, will take the form of a presentation. There is obviously a more detailed report and set of papers that sits behind the presentation that's been circulated to you. And the aim today really is to provide you with a summary of all of our workforce development activities, and that will cover recruitment, succession planning, our usual annual update on employment equality trends, as well as picking up on things like wellbeing, leadership and culture. So by way of background, the workforce development strategy has been in place for some time, but we refreshed it in 2022, and the strategy is a 3-year strategy to 2025. I think it's fair to say that a key focus of the strategy was recruitment and retention. It's certainly recruitment and retention is a significant challenge for a number of organisations and the local government sectors affected by that. It's important to acknowledge the jobs market was significantly impacted by the pandemic, technology, ways of working. But prior to that, you'd got a lot of organisations, including councils, that were struggling to fill vacancies nationally, and we've got experience of shrinking labour pools for a lot of job areas. So it's been a challenge for some time. The health warning with all of this is the situation is fluid, and these trends can be subject to change. That can be influenced by a change of government policy. It can be influenced by cost of living pressures, where people may take the decision to return to the labour market. What we wanted to do in pulling together the strategy, one of our ambitions was to be an employer of choice for the area. We wanted to use research to inform our approach.
In terms of the sources of research, they're set out within the report. But for example, we consulted with the local government association who pull in data from relevant ONS surveys and other studies. And we also looked at recruitment themes from organisations like Glassdoor and LinkedIn as well. And so we had a good cross section of research and different views coming through. Some of the trends that came through, which are listed on the slide and within the report, certainly there was a theme that where graduates and young people are looking for work, they're drawn to companies that take social issues seriously and equality seriously, and career development very key. There was even one or two instances of examples where graduates are prioritising career development progression prospects over salary in some cases. The theme of labour pool shrinking was strong, and some companies are working actively to find and grow new talent pools. So, for example, in some instances, some organisations will look to find support from recruitment companies. That's particularly common with specialist jobs and executive jobs. But a very common theme from a lot of companies was about upskilling and less emphasis on external hiring, more on internal hiring and retraining to fill those skills gaps. Employee branding came up, and certainly the areas that seem to be very effective in connecting with candidates with those companies that promoted good, positive reputation and social ethics and culture. Also, recruitment researchers reported, perhaps not surprisingly, that employees and job seekers highly value employers that look after the well-being and can offer flexibility at work. And whilst hybrid working came up, and again, that's not surprising, it wasn't just about hybrid working. Certainly graduates and young people really value that collaboration in the office, that learning, those connections with colleagues, and people returning to the workplace. It was more around flexibility of working hours that was important to them. And then last but not least, you've got HR automation, which can pull in obviously onboarding experiences and also things like AI. But the key message coming from that was candidates, quite rightly, want speedy, modern, engaging recruitment processes. So based on that research, this is a little summary of how we implemented this. Back in November 2022, with the support of colleagues from Digital Services, we created a new recruitment landing page on our website. I have to say already we're updating it, and there's a link there if you want to explore the full landing page. But hopefully you'll see a few examples there of how we've tried to apply the research. You can't see it on that slide, but we promoted our work on climate change. You'll see there our work in the community and volunteering, as well as promoting work experience opportunities, apprentice opportunities, our culture values and career development prospects as well. There's also reference on that slide to a new online recruitment system that we launched at the same time. It was a legacy system that needed replacement. So we did take the opportunity to modernise that. That improved the candidate experience. So, for example, they can go on and pick their own interview time. They get automatic acknowledgements that we've received their application form, and contracts and induction information is all automated online. So it's a lot slicker and it's a lot quicker, which is very important if you're competing for candidates with another organisation. Sometimes speed of getting that contract out can make the difference. And the good thing as well, we're starting to get some good data out of this system. It's early days and we need to improve. It is obviously part year because we introduced it in November 22. A couple of slides here. Firstly, our recruitment reach. So you'll see that the map on the right details where our employees live. We've actually got 150 staff that live in the district who are also our customers. But you'll notice that beyond the district, some of the surrounding areas, not surprisingly, around the district borders include job applicants from Wolverhampton, Dudley, Cannock, Stafford, Telford, Shropshire and Walsall. That's where our other job applicants who've been successful live. There's also some success further afield we're picking up, particularly hard to recruit specialist posts, and that's where our hybrid working technology is really helpful, and that's made that possible as well, where that's extended that recruitment reach. The map on the left of the slide, you'll recognise our 5 localities, and we want to develop our progress in this area, working with existing services and also external partners. So we can really think very carefully about where and how we advertise jobs, where we host career events, how we're promoting apprenticeships and even work experience opportunities to build relationships with our future labour pools, but also make sure as a local employer we are really trying to support areas of highest need as well, and make these opportunities widely known, and where appropriate as well, joined up with partners, put in place pre-employment support where that's needed. The other data that's starting to come through from our system, you'll see there we've got 87% candidate acceptance rates, 75% of vacancies were filled first time, and our retention rate was 88%, which was an improvement on the previous year. We're particularly pleased with that one given the market. And the second row on the slide picks up on the research point about the importance of finding and growing new talent pools. So there's a number of examples there. We've had 20 student work experience placements. So I think that is around 16 students for local schools. And we've also had 4 placements in planning and legal services for further ed students. We've had over the last 2 years 12 apprentices, 5 secured employment. 50% of our appointments have been internal. We're really pleased about that because that's a really good mix of succession planning and giving promotions to existing staff, which is important from a retention point of view. But you've got that balance as well, because we're a local employer, it's very important we're providing employment opportunities for people. And also, of course, that mix means that's important for diversity as well. Certainly external recruitment is important for that agenda and making sure we're representative of our communities. And last but not least, we have an annual talent management programme called Aspire. Not just for managers, it's for all council colleagues. There's the Aspire programme, it's a variety of workshops. Colleagues get a personal mentor. They work very closely with members. Certainly our latest Aspire cohort have really enjoyed presenting their corporate project to a working group of members, as well as working closely with CLT and ELT members as well. And the really great thing about this programme is as an estimate, if you go back over the previous cohorts, about a third of applicants go on to further career advancement or educational attainment according to the preference. So I'm just going to move on over to the next slide. So I'm going to look at equality now, and this will highlight some of the data that you would see in Appendix B of the papers, which is the equality trends. So as members will be aware, we report annually on gender pay gap, and the figures of the report confirm that for 2023, our gender pay gap, there's 2 calculations. There's the mean, which came out at 4.87, and the median, which came out at 6.98. And that was an improvement on the previous year, which means our gender pay gap is reducing, which is obviously where we want to see it go. And on the dashboard on the slide, that shows the percentage reduction improvement in that area. Also remain positive in terms of gender balance. Our top 3 management tiers are populated by at least 50% or more female managers. Looking at age profile, this is a workforce priority. I have to say, over the years, this is something we've really worked hard on it and struggled to turn around, but we have started to see some improvement and sustaining that. So if I look at last year, it was a modest improvement, and the year before it was a modest improvement. That totals about 5% improvement in terms of the employment of those aged 25 and under. There's certainly room for more improvement. That's something we really want to build on, and our apprenticeship schemes really helped with that. We have employed 22 colleagues from ethnic minority backgrounds. That's an improvement on the previous 2 years. I believe the previous 2 years, 1 year it was 16, 1 year it was 14. So it's really positive that we're seeing our recruitment is becoming more diverse. And we also asked a question in our recent employee engagement survey where we asked if staff agreed we were an inclusive organisation, and we received a rating of 8.8 out of 10. I'm going to pick up on the employee survey in a bit more detail later on to give you a summary of those results. Finally, on this slide, we signed up to the Disability Confident Standard, which, as you know, is a government scheme which is aimed at removing barriers to employment for people with disabilities. So the next slide is all around culture, and that pulls in wellbeing, leadership and working environment. This is an overview slide. We do have an established wellbeing strategy that was developed in 21-22, and that's supported by an online wellbeing resource hub for staff, as well as relevant leadership and wellbeing training. You'll see from the slide as well, we were very privileged to receive recognition in September. We got the Workplace Wellbeing Charter Award from Health at Work, which is an external quality assessment of our wellbeing programme, and it also gives us advice in terms of how to improve and take further steps. The other thing I will make mention of is in the employment trends report, we always report on absence and attendance. And as members know, we have an annual absence target, which is we try not to exceed an average of 6.95 days per employee per year in terms of sickness absence. We did, for the first time in years, I have to say, slip slightly over that. That came out at 7.20, slightly above target, but the reason for that was long-term absence. And within long-term absence, as you can imagine, that captures a lot of chronic illnesses. However, we did fare well with short-term absence. You'll see the figure on the slide there. That's a slight improvement from the previous year, and I would say low as well. And we compare favourably in terms of national averages as well. So the final point of the slide, it mentions culture and engagement surveys. So I'm going to pick up on that now. I did mention we ran an employee engagement survey, so I'll provide you with a quick summary of the results. We ran the survey last summer and it closed last September, and the 160 responses there equate to, it was just ever so slightly under 50%, it was 49 point something percent. I have to say, really representative set of results for employees that work in the community hub. It less so for some of our frontline services, and practical reasons for that, but we are mindful of that, and that's certainly an area that we want to strengthen, that we're currently working through. So I'll just run you through some of the themes. So we asked colleagues what did they like best about working for South Staffordshire Council, and you'll see here that there's a number of themes mentioned, ranging from culture and working environment. Flexible and hybrid working was popular. Our new community hub, fantastic facilities and location were mentioned, career progression, but lots about positive relationships and support from colleagues, teams and managers. And with our communities as well, that came through strong. Now, each question had an option comments box. So I'll give you a quick summary of some of the comments that came through from this question on the next slide. I won't read this through line by line. I'll just leave that slide up for you to have a quick look at. But hopefully you'll see the theme from the previous slide coming through, particularly around good team spirit and positive relationships. We also asked a question about how people would describe our culture, or what word they'd use. And again, you've got a summary on this slide. So comments range from supportive and caring, friendly and positive, inclusive, forward-thinking, flexible, and lots more. And then the next set of themes I'm going to take you through, rather than questions, they were statements, and we asked colleagues whether they agreed or disagreed with them using a rating scale of 0 to 10. So basically, the closest somebody has scored 0, that's the more they disagree with the statement. The closer they are to the rating of 10, that means the more they agree with the statement.
And the first theme is on wellbeing. I've just selected a sample of themes from the wellbeing section. So we asked colleagues if they agree that the council cares about their wellbeing and supports them in balancing their work and personal commitments. And we received an average rating of 8.2. We asked colleagues if they felt they were able to recognise triggers for stress and manage stress effectively where that occurred. And we received an average rating of 7.5. And we also asked colleagues if they felt happy and safe in the working environment and received an average rating of 8.8. So 1 or 2 points to unpack from that slide. Firstly, even if we receive a high rating, we always go through the optional comments box. We get lots of suggestions from staff in terms of how we can improve. That can feed into support for the workforce or improve communication, a whole range of things. The other point I'd mention about the stress question, we asked that. That's clearly very important because it's really difficult to completely eliminate stress from our lives. We know that. The comments indicate that overall colleagues have got a good awareness of triggers for stress and good stress management strategies. But notwithstanding that's a question that we will always ask and keep under review. It's always an area we want to improve on. And we do have a range of strong wellbeing support in place, which I'll touch on. But in particular, our culture is very much about encouraging conversations at work about mental health wellbeing and good self-care and healthy working habits. And as I say, lots of support and resources to back that up as well. It's important to us. Moving on to the next set of questions. This is on the theme of being a well-run organisation. So we asked colleagues if they agreed that we provided them with regular communication about our plans and priorities and received an average rating of 8.4 for that statement. We also asked colleagues if they felt they've got sufficient training to carry out their job and received an average rating of 8.3. And what was pleasing in the optional comments box is several colleagues felt that we went above and beyond that, providing them with good career development progression opportunities, and our Aspire Talent Management Programme got a mention. And we also asked colleagues if they felt we were an inclusive organisation, which I previously mentioned. We received a rating of 8.8, which chimed with a lot of comments around people feeling that we were welcoming and friendly as an organisation. In fairness, I think you could probably put that question in various sections, including leadership, but we've put it in the well-run organisation section. So the next slide relates to leadership. We asked colleagues if they agreed that they got a good working relationship with their line manager and received an average rating of 8.8. We also asked if they were satisfied with the leader and the culture of the organisation and received a rating of 8.7, particularly pleased with the close connection of those scores in terms of consistency. Again, this is one of those other areas where, the job is never done and it's about sustaining and improving. It's important. We also asked a statement whether colleagues agreed that they were treated fairly and felt valued and received a rating of 8.3. So the next slide relates to our ambitions to be an employer of choice. So we asked colleagues if they would recommend the council as a place to work, and we received just over 96% of respondents said yes. Some comparative data, we asked the same question in our 2022 survey, and that came in at 93.5%. But a previous survey pre-pandemic, we checked back and we'd asked the same question, and that came in at 67%. So that was quite interesting, and a lot of the organisational development researchers often say it takes years to build a culture. So hopefully that shows our journey. But again, the job isn't done. There's always more to do and improve and learn. But obviously that was pleasing to note. So in conclusion, I hope that's been a useful summary of the Workforce Development Strategy progress. Paragraph 4.1 of the report sets out further work planned related to workforce and also our equality programme. There are some actions as well detailed at the back of Appendix B, the Equality Trends document, Just a little bit of caveat, they relate to 2023-24 actions, which are almost progressed. We will be revisiting those as part of refreshing the council plan, which is ongoing at the moment, because clearly that needs to be the driver in terms of our equality strategic objectives going forward this year and beyond. Hope that's been helpful, and I'll hand back over to Chairman with my thanks.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bridgewater. As I said at the beginning, I think this was a really encouraging report to read, an excellent report. It was of particular interest to me, as I've been a member of this committee for quite a number of years now, as Mrs. Holmes also, as Councillor Mrs. Holmes. And I think we've seen a steady improvement in this over the years, which has been really, really good to see. There are some things in there, if you dig down into those figures, that I think are quite interesting. I was quite intrigued by the person from London that we either recruited or travelled from London to see us. And I always take great pleasure when I used to chair a lot of committees for Wolverhampton Council. I used to take great pleasure in when they were running down South Staffs as being a little tin pot authority. And I used to say, well, it's quite interesting to see how we do attract people from elsewhere outside of our district, and most of the people that work for Wolverhampton seem to live in South Staffordshire, which always intrigued me. But no, that's excellent, Mrs. Bridgewater. So I'll open it up now. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is about recruitment and retention. How many exit interview conversations have we held in 23 to 24? And what have we learned from what the people have told us? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burnett, for the question. We've tried a few different models of exit interviews. The initial model that we've tried is for me to try and hold a personal conversation with every leaver. We felt that was important. I think that can sometimes dig under the detail. I have to say it's been a little bit sporadic, and sometimes that is in relation to notice periods and being able to actually make contact with the person in time. So we have made a recent change to it. The recent change that we've done is we attach, it's a very brief user-friendly survey on themes. There's a balance between themes and additional comments to try and get that consistently from everybody that leaves. Obviously it's voluntary, but at the same time also asking them to make contact direct with me to have that discussion as well. And obviously we give them an offer that if they would prefer to speak to somebody else, they'd be very welcome to. So that modification we've just put in place, so we need to evaluate that to see if that's more effective. Of the exit interviews that we have held, we are just theming them, and what I would say is certainly very positive comments around things like our flexibility and our culture very much mirror the survey. It's very practical suggestions that we're getting out of that in terms of improvements, even fine-tuning to things like our induction programme. So, you know, very positive, but that's something obviously that we hope we can build that data, because it's really important, softer but vital intelligence to try and refine what we do and learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bridgewater. Any further questions? Councillor Mrs. Allen.
Firstly, well done, because I can see improvements on this from last year. Okay, and you must be pleased. I was fortunate enough to meet some of the young people who came in from schools for their work experience. And one of the things they were quite unaware of really is the wide range of jobs within the council. What sort of a package do they receive, or instruction do they receive when they arrive from the schools, please? And do you use this occasion to harvest their detail? I note some of the pupils were already indicating they'd be willing to look at an apprenticeship or a job. And I think this is an encouraging sign that we should be doing something about. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'm really pleased that you got the opportunity to meet some of the students. So we revised our work experience programme, and what we did, we put together an offer, working with the career advisors from the school, encouraging students not just to email us and say we want a work experience placement, but to think carefully about what career they wanted to go into, or if they didn't know that, what subjects played to their strengths, and we asked them to apply, like a little letter of application, again, preparing them for the world of work. And we prioritise requests for students within the South Staffordshire district that they are studying or live in the South Staffordshire district. We provided them with an induction on day one in terms of getting the most out of the work experience student. Practical things that, you know, they're dealing with busy managers, so there'll be an element of shadowing and you know, sometimes sitting whilst managers are doing the job. But we went through a lot of practical tips, and we tried as well to build into the programme in terms of making sure that there was a mentor so that they could go back to the manager after the experience if, for example, they needed help with, you know, an application, whether that was for college or university. We also signed up to giving them an employment reference as well. And we also gave them an allowance in recognition of the cost of living to support them with obviously whether that was travel or for lunch. And you know, I've got to say our managers were really, really impressed with the students. It was a pleasure to host them. So we're hoping to build on that. We are refining that, and we're looking at how we can expand that, particularly with things like T levels in schools to try and support that. Wanting to maybe build it around some practical projects. For us, they are our future labour pool. We want them to experience our culture, open their eyes to all of the careers that we've got, because sometimes you know, people can reflect, they can, you know, I can remember when I was 16, I didn't go into the job that I expected. So it's just really to give them a real wide choice around the different careers that we offer. And hopefully, you know, they'll consider us in the future.
My other comment is about your graduates, because in my own family, I have two daughters who are quite well qualified. One's been working for ONS and has just come out to run a charity at a reduction in salary because it's about job satisfaction now for those and feeling worthy what they're doing, I think. I'm interested to see a reflection on that. You're talking about social action, you know, social justice, and being interested in those issues, which they are. I do think this is something where, when we're recruiting at that sort of a level, we do need to be aware about how to pitch it for those young people. And I think there's an increasing number of people in midlife who are looking to either downsize or to reduce their workload so they can accommodate their hobbies or the other things that they wish to do, or their caring responsibilities. I know that caring responsibilities are actually something which are impeding some people in the workplace at the moment. And I'm wondering what we do with our employees when they have those responsibilities, please.
Again, thank you for the question. So in relation to graduates, I do agree we need to pitch that at a slightly different audience. When we do the career events with schools, we often will have a look at a number of years, and we'll host specific events for those year groups, including sixth form. What we're trying to do again is build relationships with those graduates, and we are using our work experience scheme to do that. So we've had that better. Have a slight blip then. We've had some long-term work experience placements in planning and legal services. And again, it's about trying to keep that relationship with them, because if they go to university, they may want work over the summer. If we can do that in the area that they're studying in, again, we're keen to do that. But even if it's casual work with our council elsewhere, because as you know, even in leisure services, we offer work during the summer, it just keeps that connection with us. But we're really keen to build up our connections with graduates, because obviously a lot of our jobs are in finance, HR, legal, you know, that those are all the areas that they go and study in. So we're really keen to try and capture them. I think what I'd like to see happening in terms of expanding that is that it's not just a week or a couple of weeks work experience, but we keep them in that professional area over the summer and give them paid work experience. That will obviously help them as students in practical ways, but also, again, it helps with their studies as well. and then hopefully we'll get them back when they finish the studies. In relation to the comment around caring, I was really interested to hear about that because we are noticing that people are making decisions now to return to the workplace. So we value experience. So that's really positive for us. And what we're noticing is the flexibility, and it comes back to the research, very much is around hours. Certainly one of the things we learned during lockdown, um, we had obviously, we needed to support employees with carers, with homeschooling, a whole range of things. And basically where it was appropriate for the business, we just opened up the working hours so people could work hours over a 7-day week. They could balance care with partners, family, friends, and it worked so well for us. So we've kept that where it's appropriate for the job. So we've actually got a very flexible approach. Obviously the customers come first. We need to make sure it works for our customers and our services. But where we can, we do open up that flexibility, and we actually find we get loyalty because of that, and people go the extra mile. So it's really paid off. That's in addition to the additional flexibility we would give in terms of, leave, whether that's if people need some extra consideration with caring or illness in the family, we would always try to be considerate to those needs.
Thank you, Mrs. Bridgewater. Any more questions? Yes, Councillor Dr. Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. At the risk of joining the chorus of approval, I would like to say I too would endorse all the comments that have been made. This is a very encouraging report, I have to say, and you should really be rightfully proud of all the work you've done. It is excellent. There's two very brief questions. First, one very simple. It's included in the appendix and you presented it, but I'll be very interested to know what the breakdown of employees via individual wards is, as opposed to just localities. I assume the numbers will be quite small, but as we've got n equals 1 in a few other places, I didn't think that would be too much of a problem. Do you think that would be something we could do? Sorry.
That's right, the technology is working. Thank you very much for the question. I will be honest, I can't answer it. That's something I'm going to have to go away and look at. I can't give you the answer, but I'm pretty sure we'll be able to break that down through the data. We've got support from our colleagues that have got an expertise. I think is it in the GIS technology? I think they use in planning, so they're far better at that technology than myself. But my understanding is that we've got the data, so we'll just need the technical support from colleagues. And I think that's an excellent point. We'd really like to have a look at that data by ward, and happy to take that back and obviously update the committee when that's available.
Great, thank you. And the other one is just about, so I noted and I think we'd heard this before, the plan to do a salary sacrifice scheme going forward, but which, again, I would support that as being an excellent way forward. Can you just remind me, because I don't know, can you remind me, being a euphemism for I don't know, what sort of things have we already got as employee benefits at the moment?
Thank you. So the majority of our employee benefits are probably around things like flexibility, flexi time. We have things like a buying of annual leave scheme. We obviously support the government scheme, which helps subsidise the cost of childcare. We have discounted leisure memberships as well that we offer to staff, and obviously there's a link there with our wellbeing programme. And I'm sure there's lots more. So it may well be I have to do a bit of a follow-up to this question. But I know, I think in our workforce development strategy, you've only got a summary here. We do a nice summary at the beginning of the document, and I'll circulate that, and then you've got a good coverage of all the benefits. But we are looking at salary sacrifice schemes, and we engaged with an organisation called VivUp last year. And we started off with something called lifestyle savings. So basically employees can log onto that site and register, and they can access a whole range of discounts, whether that's eating out, high street or online retail. So it can include, things like supermarket shopping and things like that. So hopefully over time that, we appreciate the cost of living is difficult, and hopefully that's a small way in which we can assist and take the load off. And it's through that same organisation that we'll be looking to take forward salary sacrifice schemes. So we did a survey with staff to make them aware of what products were available, and based on that we're looking at taking some forward. So we've got a project group at the moment. I'm working with colleagues from HR and finance and legal, want to make sure we get all of the tax rules correct, from and all of that detail that we're working through, and subject to all of that being satisfactory, we're hoping to launch our first scheme this year, which will be home in electronics. So with some schemes you save more than others, but I think that the benefit of this particular scheme is that if people want to buy a big product, it could be white goods, electronic goods, it does enable them to pay through payroll and spread payments over 2 years to ease payments. But I will circulate some information by email, so you've got a more detailed summary of our employee benefits. I'm sorry, my mind went blank for a moment or two, but I will come back and confirm all of those.
Thank you. Any more questions? I think I've got one question, Mrs. Bridgewater. I think we talked about this last year, or we've certainly talked in the past. When we talked about absences and sickness, I think some of the things we noticed was that probably since COVID, there had been some increase in mental health issues, whether it be a small increase or not. And I think we talked about providing support to staff through counselling services and that sort of thing. Presumably that is continuing and will continue as long as we feel that there is an impact from issues that have happened in the past.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that's a really interesting point, and I think we were very, very mindful through COVID around the impact on our communities and our workforce. That was the time where we put in a new wellbeing strategy, and we introduced an online wellbeing resource hub at actually very little cost. It tapped into a lot of resources, whether it's NHS apps, even some really good wellbeing videos, TED Talks on YouTube, lots of really great resources. But yes, we do have a strong employee assistance programme that sits underneath that. That covers occupational health, physiotherapy and counselling, and it's a qualified psychologist that provides that counselling, so that we've got appropriate clinical governance checks in place to obviously underpin what we do. We've also got a range of wellbeing contact colleagues, so people have got a wide variety of choice of who they can go and talk to if they wish to. It can be a manager, it can be human resources, or one of these wellbeing contacts. And we've also, on the back of the survey actually, we've just recently provided an update on training for managers around wellbeing conversations, and also the HSE standards around stress and risk assessments and best practice there as well. So yeah, we have that whole package in place. What was interesting is when we looked at our absence data in response to your question, we although we slipped slightly over target because of long-term absence, our one of the absence categories that had reduced from the previous year was stress and anxiety, which again that was a surprise to me, because obviously we're coming out of a pandemic, and that's booked the national trend a little bit as well. Clearly there can be, when we do look at that kind of health issue, there can be work and personal things wrapped up in that as well. But those figures, as I say, have reduced, but it's something that we obviously have to keep under review to make sure that's well managed.
Thank you, Mrs. Bridgewater. Are there any more questions? No? Well, thank you very much on behalf of the committee. Again, a very comprehensive report and a very comprehensive presentation, and thank you very much for your answers to our questions. I take it that the committee is quite happy to adopt Mrs. Bridgewater's report. Yeah. Thank you. Right, we will move on to the final item on our agenda, item 7, report on the work programme and complaints from Mrs. Fowkes.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. I feel somewhat inadequate after all the interesting reports you've had, and this is just like a normal one. But anyway, so just to summarise, members, and update you in respect to the key governance issues. The currently no active code of conduct complaints that I'm dealing with. I've actually potentially got one coming through since I wrote the report in relation to a parish member, but that hasn't actually landed yet. So at the moment, I've got no active code of conduct complaints. We've had no new decisions from the local government ombudsman, but I'm aware, again, in a further update from when I wrote the report, we've got 2 cases that are currently being subject to investigation by the local government ombudsman, and obviously those will be reported through to this committee when they are concluded. We've had no stage 2 complaints of the council's complaint procedure that have been upheld so far since May 2023. And pleasingly, there are no significant data breaches to report that have needed reporting to the Information Commissioner's Office. As previously reported, there's been a couple of national issues, but no ones specifically for South Staffordshire. So finally, members, the work programme is as set out in the report, and just to highlight the minor amendment that because Wendy was able to bring her workforce development update report to committee today, that's incorporated obviously the normal employment trends report, which was scheduled for March, but obviously that has been taken now. So at your next meeting, it'll be the health and safety report, my normal update report, and possibly, depending on what happens, a further update report on the elections. But we'll see what happens in that space. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Farks. Are there any questions at all for Mrs. Farks or any comments? No. Can I just remind members that we have got the opportunity, if we wish, to suggest any topics within the realm of this committee, to bring them forward for discussion. Just talk to Mrs. Farks or myself, and we can add those into the work programme. So thank you very much for your attendance this afternoon and your contribution. As ever, when Mrs. Bridgewater comes, we always have quite a good discussion with the reports. The next meeting will be the 28th of March, and I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.